Hi, I'm Shivan Sarna, and I'm the founder of Chronic Condition Rescue and SIBO SOS. And for the past, now 7 years, I have more than that. I've really appreciated what Microbiome Labs does. And for the past 4 or 5 years, they have been really excellent at educating us here in this community. And today it is no different. We have Lacey Hall here, who I'm going to really mess up her title, but Executive Scientific Officer and Educator. What's your real title, Lacey?
Head of Scientific Affairs. I do the science.
Okay,
that's it.
Right? There you go. So what we're going to do today is talk about leaky gut and how to get a resilient microbiome and what you can do to help overhaul your microbiome. So I'm going to just quickly hand things over to her. I know it's later than usual, so I'm going to let her get started. The presentation is phenomenal, and I'm very, very excited about this. Head of Scientific Affairs, very nice.
Let's see, can you guys see my note screen, or are you just seeing?
We see the note screen.
Okay, I have to unplug from the external monitor. I don't know how to make it work that way. Let's see. Let me stop share and reshare, okay?
Okay, sure.
Sorry about that. Oh, no or yes?
It's bigger. It's bigger.
Okay,
I think it's
there we
big.
go.
Whether or not it's full screen, I don't know, but it looks good.
It looks good. All right. It's great to be here, everyone. Thank you so much. Yeah, my name is Lacey Hall. I love talking about the gut microbiome. It's a huge passion of mine because it's such an integral part of root cause medicine. And that's what we're in the business of. When you heal the gut, you're healing so many parts of the body. So today we're going to talk about building resilience through the gut microbiome. And we'll talk about a 3-step program called the Total Gut Restoration Program. And this is a way to really get the gut back on track. It's very foundational. So I will have to nerd out with you a little bit. We'll throw in some sciencey terms. If you need some clarification, just please throw it in the chat, some questions, and I'll be sure to answer them at the end. And I'll try to keep it fun and light with some quiz questions along the way too.
But what she really meant was put them in the Q&A box.
Oh, sorry, put them in the Q&A box. So sorry. Technical terms. All right, so when we think about a healthy gut microbiome, what are we talking about? We know that a microbiome impacts our overall health. What does it need to do for us? We need it to produce a bunch of molecules called postbiotics. This comes from the foods that you're eating, especially foods like fiber. We need it to contribute to a well-functioning intestinal barrier. We want that barrier to be a reinforcement so nothing can get through. We want it to have a low inflammatory load, meaning that there aren't a lot of inflammatory organisms and pathogenic bacteria that are living there. We want to keep it in balance. And we know that when we do this, we'll build resilience so it will lead to less chronic diseases, especially that stem in the gut, but not necessarily just in the gut. Really thinking about the overall health and wellness of our body. So quick quiz question. What do you think is the average number of microbial species that are found in the gut microbiome? If you want to throw that in the, can I say throw that in the chat? Throw that one in the chat, right?
Sure, why not? Sure.
What do you think it is? I asked some people a little while ago and they had some crazy answers. I'd love to see what you guys think. Well, the answer is 300 to 500 species of bacteria and microorganisms. So that number has gone down as our industrialized lifestyle and exposure to things like antibiotics has grown over the years, but that's a really good microbiome. Now, I see a lot of stool tests that come across my desk with patients that have around 50, 75, or 100. That's pretty common, and we want to get that number as high as possible, and I'll explain why through this deck. So when we think about a healthy gut, what is a healthy gut? Let's create some guardrails around this term. So we look at this picture here on the left, a healthy gut. Let's define it with just a few areas. We want high diversity. So that number of bacteria that live within the gut, we want the highest number possible. That 300 to 500 is a great goal. It's a hard one, actually, but we want to get as many bacteria and organisms living there as possible. And we want high numbers of our protective strains. We call these our commensal organisms or our keystone organisms. We want those organisms to produce something called short-chain fatty acids. That's the SCFA, short-chain fatty acids. Those are these amazing molecules that are created by these bacteria that play a role in your overall health. And then at the very bottom here, we want these well-formed tight junctions. That means This little caterpillar that you see on the screen is actually your intestinal lining. And we want to have these cells glued together. We don't want gaps formed or coming up in them. We want everything healed and sealed and linked together. So that prevents something called leaky gut. So we see these three layers here, the bacteria, we see this blue area as our mucosal lining, and then we see our epithelial barrier, our intestinal cells. So those are the areas that we're going to look to talk about during this presentation. But dysbiosis and leaky gut is something that presents in most patients that I see on a day-to-day basis. What is dysbiosis? It's the opposite. It's a low number of the protective types of bacteria that we really want growing in the gut. And here are their fancy names: Akkermansia, Muciniphila, Faecalibacterium prausnitzii, different bifidobacteria groups. You don't have to know those. We can just call them keystone species. They're our most protective groups. Low diversity. Those are the patients whose stool tests come across my desk with a 50 to 75 number of bacteria living in their gut. We want to get them to that 300 to 500. This means that they're not going to produce a lot of short chain fatty acids. So there's not a lot of functionality. Your gut isn't communicating, because that's how it communicates with other parts of the body. And then we have a break in this mucus barrier. That means that the bacteria in your gut are actually touching and interacting with your epithelial barrier, the cells of your intestinal lining. And we don't want that. If you look at the picture, we can see that just like kind of surge or overtaking like a castle gate, we see this burst through this epithelial barrier into your own circulatory or bloodstream system, and it causes your immune system to freak out, and this leads to inflammation. So when bacteria get into your bloodstream, this leads to bacterial toxins getting into your bloodstream, and your immune system is like, this isn't supposed to be here. You're not supposed to be here. Get out of here. So it leads to an inflammatory response. But your gut is very long. Your colon itself is 5 feet long. And if you have these little punctures all throughout that area, that little snowball of inflammation turns into something much bigger. Now, what are some of these risk factors that lead to dysbiosis and some of those unfavorable characteristics in a gut? Medications like antibiotics and natural antimicrobial therapies. I'm not saying you don't need them, but we just need to rebuild the gut afterwards, especially after doing something like a SIBO treatment, where it's imperative to be on some antimicrobials and antibiotics here and there. It depends on the patient and the healthcare provider, but we see it all the time. Our message is not to skip them, but let's rebuild afterwards. Infections that can be from foodborne illness, just general sickness, being exposed to things, especially while traveling, excessive alcohol, smoking, stress, travel. I'm definitely someone that fits into the travel category. So I have to take extra care of my gut. I travel a lot for work. Saturated fats and the standard American diet that would be compromised of high calorie, high sugar, high fat, of course, the fast food. And while you might know that we're not supposed to eat these things, of course, the majority of Americans do. So this leads to big changes in the microbial landscape. Different toxins in our own environment and our household items like cleaning products, but then also pesticides and residues that we find on fruits and vegetables if we're not able to choose organic. So glyphosates play a huge role in the composition of the types of bacteria living in our gut. And then heavy metals can play a role too. Lack of sleep. Ooh, I have a baby. That's part of mine as well. Intense exercise as well. Even though it's something good, it can lead to changes in the gut and a leakiness and a permeability within that gut lining. So I'm sure some of us can check off a few areas here that we may have strengths and weaknesses in, but it can all lead to changes in the overall microorganisms. So going back to this picture, our main issue and the main thing that we're looking to control when we're thinking about the gut and dysbiosis is something called lipopolysaccharide, or LPS for short. And lipopolysaccharide comes from bacteria in our gut. And even if you have the most perfect and beautiful microbiome, you still have lipopolysaccharide there. Lipopolysaccharide is highly inflammatory and highly toxic to the human body. We all have some of it there. It's nothing to be afraid of, but we just need to make sure we don't have too much of it. So what we can implement different therapies to control that. But what happens if we do have this leakiness and permeability to the gut lining where bacteria is able to enter the bloodstream? This is going to, again, cause the immune system to have a freak out moment. That's the technical term, I promise you. So lipopolysaccharide is going to trigger the immune system that leads to an inflammatory response. So we don't want that to happen. We want to heal and seal these breaks in the foundation and change the types of organisms living there so we don't have too much lipopolysaccharide circulating. What is lipopolysaccharide? If you look at the small image on the left, we see a little drawing of a bacteria. Lipopolysaccharide, or LPS, lives in the outside membrane of the bacteria, of certain types of bacteria called gram-negative. So again, it's naturally present, but this toxin is very immunogenic. It's very inflammatory to the body. So we just want to make sure there isn't too much of it occurring. Now, if you want to get technical, for those of you that really like to get into the weeds, into the nitty-gritty, the gram-negative bacteria belong to a group called proteobacteria. And proteobacteria is where our pathogenic organisms like E. coli and Salmonella, I'm sure you're familiar with those types of organisms, but there's plenty other that live in that category as well, like H. pylori. They all contain lipopolysaccharide in their cell wall. Okay? Now, with metabolic endotoxemia, when this reaction occurs essentially in the body, it's triggering the immune system. Now, your immune system and microbiome are very intimately connected. Some people may have heard the term that 70% of your immune system lives in your gut, and that's true. It's true because on one side of that intestinal wall, you have bacteria. On the other side, you have your immune system. Why? It's a training camp for bacteria, because then your immune system is learning how to figure out who's a friend and who's an enemy. So it's very important. So your immune system lives there. Also, we don't want to allow a bacterial infection. So anyway, metabolic endotoxemia is when too much lipopolysaccharide is entering the bloodstream and it's triggering this immune response, causing low-grade inflammation. So we think of this snowball that's slowly growing and is driven by the bacteria and lipopolysaccharide. It's estimated to affect about 1/3 of the population, but I would argue that it's probably much, much higher. We just don't have a really good way of capturing it. And it's characterized by a spike in lipopolysaccharide from bacteria, toxins getting into the bloodstream. And this happens actually after consuming food, typically after a really high-fat diet, especially one that's high in saturated fat. Coconut oil was the highest, I believe, that spiked the LPS serum endotoxin after eating. That doesn't mean you need to avoid it. We just need to make sure that you have a really strong and resilient gut to prevent that LPS spike. And we know that when there's elevated inflammation, this can impact a lot of things like your triglycerides and your insulin production and response as well. So there's a lot of clinical scenarios in which the LPS and lipopolysaccharide is linked to different conditions. So I'll just show you a few of those right now. So we know that this LPS, metabolic endotoxemia, is linked to obesity and insulin resistance. We know that it's linked to type 2 diabetes and in many ways, actually. And it's interesting how the gut plays such a role over metabolic health. Everything with semaglutide, Ozempic, GLP-1 agonists, that all has to do with the gut. So the gut becomes this gateway to so many different things. We know that LPS plays a huge role in overall gut-brain connection, anxiety and depression and other mental health conditions, and it's able to actually cross the blood-brain barrier. So much that we actually see LPS embedded and enriched in different areas of the brain of Alzheimer's disease patients, since it's able to cross that barrier. We see a disruption in female reproductive health with too much circulating LPS in the bloodstream, and we see it as a trigger and contributor to autoimmune diseases and motility issues as well. We see LPS playing a role in gastric motility, influencing things like gastroparesis, where food isn't leaving your stomach, loss of appetite and nausea. It plays a role in a lot of things. But that's because our gut is that gateway. It is a portal. And I think that's the beauty of it all. When we start to fix the gut and we change the type of bacteria that are living in the gut, then we can see a trickle effect of other systems functioning better and how we're feeling on a day-to-day basis. So this microbiome impact, we call this gut organ axis. So if you look at the picture on the right, when you run along all these pathways, we see direct links from the gut to adipose tissue, the way in which it influences the fat tissue within our body, the gut-liver axis. The gut plays a role in how well we detoxify. And a lot of people want to go on detox programs, but if you're neglecting the gut, you're not going to have as good of a detox. The gut-heart axis, heart health and cardiometabolic health is really important. Gut-kidney axis, gut-brain axis, skin and bone, just to name a few. And there are many others. So again, when we're laying the foundation, getting to root cause medicine, we're really helping the patient and helping you feel better on a day-to-day basis. True or false? You have more bacteria in your gut than actual human cells. You think about that. Your entire human body. Do you have more bacteria in your gut? I mean, more bacterial cells in your gut than human cells? True or false? The answer to that is true. You actually have up to hundreds of trillions of gut bacteria, while you have roughly 37.5 trillion human cells. So sometimes it's hard to fathom how is that possible, because we're obviously a huge being, but bacterial cells are much smaller. So that's one of the reasons. But it's hard to fathom. In some ways, we are more bacteria than human. And in fact, there is no sterile place in your body. There's a unique bacterial fingerprint and blueprint in every single area. Even your ear canal has its own microbiome that is very different from your gut microbiome. So our goal is to get you to this point here, where you have this resilient and productive ecosystem, this thriving rainforest that's residing in your gut, filled with different species of bacteria, rich in nutrients, that's alive and working together and in balance. But what we find is most people are here, kind of a desert zone where there aren't a lot of bacterial species. It's missing the mark. It's unhealthy. It's not optimal for growth or wellness. And you're not going to have those strong axes connecting the gut to all the different places of the body. And then this is one that's just unattended. This is similar to looking at the gut barrier, the different cells. When you've got cracks in that pavement and bacterial toxins like LPS are seeping through, then that's going to cause a lot of inflammation in the body. So what can we do? So let's talk about total gut restoration program. So the first step in reconditioning the gut is with our flagship product. It's called Probiotic. And this is going to help change the type of microbes living there, and it's going to help increase those really healthy species called keystone species. So there's a lot of probiotics on the market. I mean, that's an understatement. You can go to the store and there's so many, and it's so overwhelming for a patient or anybody, a consumer, to go pick up a probiotic. So traditional probiotics are typically lactobacillus and bifidobacteria, and they can work, but not in the way in which we want. We want to change that entire ecosystem so it looks like a rainforest, where bifidobacteria and lactobacillus are really just two little species, right? In that entire rainforest that we want to impact. And most likely, it's not going to survive your gastric juices to really reach the colon, which is 15 feet away from your mouth. It's a long journey. It's a long, hard journey. So we need to rethink the traditional probiotics. We can use bifidobacteria and lactobacillus, but for different things. So let's forget the old school method and think to now. So we want to take you on a paradigm shift where we change your mindset. So spores, bacterial spores, are what we use in Megaspore Probiotic. They can remain dormant in this little hibernative state for up to centuries. They can withstand very harsh environments like your stomach acid, your digestive enzymes, and your bile to reach all the way to the colon so that they can go to work. They can survive in oxygen and without oxygen, so they're very resilient. And they've been known to work in the human body and make changes to the gut microbiome. And we have a lot of research behind that. So it's the first 100% spore-based probiotic offered to you today in the United States. We have 5 strains of bacillus bacteria that each have a different function. And I'll go over some of those functions. You don't have to refrigerate it. You don't even have to keep it in the capsule. You can dump it into a little bit of yogurt and take it if you don't like taking pills. It survives digestion, has a long shelf life, and we take that product and we put it in all sorts of clinical studies because we want to show you what we're using in the studies is the same product that you're going to pick up on store shelves, because that's very important to us that it translates from research to you, to your home. So the 5 different strains are listed here. They're all Bacillus strains. We have Bacillus subtilis HU58. What does this do? It creates its own natural antibiotics. And that may sound counterintuitive, like, hey, we don't want to do that, but they're selective. It's really interesting how these antibiotics will attack the more pathogenic organisms, the organisms that contain LPS without disturbing commensal and keystone species. So it's smarter than the technologies that we can create in a lab. We're harnessing the power of nature. It produces vitamin K2. K2, especially in women, is super critical to bone mass and density, along with a million other things, but especially bone mass and bone density. Vitamin K2 puts calcium where it needs to go. That's its main job. It's really important for immune cell development as well. Bacillus coagulans is really important for supporting the immune system, especially in gastrointestinal disorders. Bacillus clausi is really good for respiratory health. We see this as a benefit, especially in children with asthma. Bacillus licheniformis can produce its own antibiotic, bacitracin, which you probably use over the counter for topical cuts. It can help improve protein digestion. It creates enzymes, and it produces B vitamins. And then last but not least, Bacillus indicus produces antioxidants like carotenoids, lycopene, astaxanthin, beta-carotene, and lutein that you can absorb. So then it's almost functioning as a gut microbiome multivitamin. And so it's helping to feed other bacteria in that environment. So what this does is it's feeding and supporting that entire rainforest ecosystem for those plants to grow, or bacteria, but in our rainforest and algae plants. So it's not about these bacteria, it's about supporting the environment and cleaning it up. And that's what we're doing with Megaspore Biotic. So our first study was conducted in 2017, and we wanted to look at, if you took Megaspore Biotic, could we lower lipopolysaccharide, LPS, that little sinister toxin coming from gram-negative bacteria? So what did we do? We recruited college students with very easily by offering them pizza and a little bit of money, because college students will do a lot for very little. So we had 75 college students come to our research center, and we said, hey, eat all of this thin crust cheese pizza. We're going to measure your blood for lipopolysaccharide, and we're going to send you home with some probiotics or a placebo, which was a rice capsule. So the subjects ate the thin crust pizza. We measured their blood. We found that 5 hours after they ate, we see this big surge in lipopolysaccharide. So we were doing a real-time analysis. We were getting their blood and they were testing their blood right away. So we saw this big surge in lipopolysaccharide. Told the students to go home, take the probiotic for 30 days, come back to our research center. Let's repeat it. Give them the pizza, measure their blood, looking for that lipopolysaccharide. And we found that the spore treatment, the ones that were taking Megaspore Biotic, there was a 42% reduction in lipopolysaccharide just from taking the probiotic, because we were healing the gut. We were filling in those holes, healing the permeability, the holes and the gaps within the gut, and we were changing the types of bacteria there. So when we lower it by 42%, we're lowering our overall inflammation. We're making that very important change. We also saw an increase in the placebo group, the group that was taking the rice capsule. Who knows why? We didn't tell them to change their diet, their lifestyle. These are college students. Of course, they're subject to staying up all night and partying and eating whatever they want. So there were probably a lot of reasons for that. But we saw a protective effect without having to do any other behavior change. Give me a moment. Now, today we have a lot of research supporting Megaspore Biotic, and we tried to put it in a lot of different clinical studies and models. We found that, yes, it lowers lipopolysaccharide by 42% in 30 days. We find that it increases microbial diversity, meaning we can get more bacteria living there, a more robust and stronger microbiome. Remember, we want between 300 and 500, not 50 to 75. We can increase short-chain fatty acids. We can lower blood triglyceride levels without changing the diet. We can help protect the liver and stimulate antioxidant production in the liver. We can improve IBS symptoms better or the same as antibiotics. And we can improve the immune response during something like a C. diff infection. Those are just some of the clinical studies and outcomes that we have found. So another pop quiz question. Megaspore Biotic has been shown to it's supposed to say reduce LPS. Oh, reduce LPS. It does say that. Reduce serum triglycerides, reduce IBS symptoms, reduce C. diff infections, or E, all the above. And Of course, our answer is E, all of the above. We want to show the diverse applications of the microbiome, not megaspore. We want to show that when we heal the gut, we heal other areas of health. And so this is an example of that. So now we want to reinforce what we're doing. Megaspore, think of it as the seeds in the garden. But mega prebiotic, a prebiotic fiber, is the fertilizer. So we got to give those bacteria the food they like to eat. And thankfully, we know what they like to eat. And when we feed bacteria the things they want to eat, they create these chemical messengers called short-chain fatty acids. They're kind of like the way in which your body communicates with your gut. We've got all these axes, right, that we're talking about: gut, liver, gut, brain, gut, heart. Well, the way in which those systems communicate is with these short-chain fatty acids. So there's three primary ones that we talk about: butyrate, propionate, and acetate, and all are very important. But butyrate is arguably the most important. So when we have a lot of butyrate production, this creates a very healthy environment. But each has its own characteristics and things that it's doing within the gut. So very important. And one of the very important aspects of short-chain fatty acids is it keeps the gut a little more acidic. We want your gut, the environment, to be more acidic because then it prevents pathogens from growing. So when you have prebiotic fibers feeding those healthy bacteria, it's helping to grow keystone species, those very important organisms that play a role in the overall health and wellness of the environment. So this helps to make the environment unfriendly to pathogens. You can't have a bunch of keystones and pathogens living in the same place. It doesn't work. They're mutually exclusive, which is great, because if we just focus on supporting the keystones, naturally the pathogens will just make their way out. They don't like this type of environment where it's a little more acidic. It supports other beneficial gut microorganisms, and it supports neurological health, neurotransmitter health, like GABA production, glutathione production, which is a really important antioxidant that's produced in the liver. And it's associated with lower levels of obesity, diabetes, liver disease, cardiovascular and metabolic health, inflammation, gastrointestinal disorders, asthma, allergies, and chronic fatigue. So supporting keystone species is a gateway to supporting overall microbiome health. It's foundational. So we can feed those keystone species with the foods they like, and they like fiber. And of course, you can get fiber in your diet. You do not need to supplement, but this is a way to get there faster and to make sure you're giving your keystone species the right fibers. So I ask people sometimes, do you have money or time, or do you have both? Because food takes a lot of time, the preparation and the planning. And if you want to cut it short, you can use a supplement to get there faster. And it is very effective. So this is a blend of 3 functional fibers: xylo-oligosaccharide from corn cob, fructo-oligosaccharide from kiwi, and galacto-oligosaccharide from cow's milk. Now pause before you blow up the Q&A about corn and cow's milk, because non-GMO corn cob is, it's actually the cob portion. We're not looking at the proteins in corn. We're looking at the fiber portion. So most people have sensitivities to corn protein or milk protein. We're taking out the protein portion and only using the fiber portion. So it's different. Okay.
Okay. Good call.
Yes. We always get that question. That's number one. And the results speak for themselves, though. So when we look at what we do when we combine Megaspore with Megapre, we see improved microbial diversity. We see improved keystone species like Bifidobacteria, Lactobacillus, the Calibacterium prausnitzii. We see a reduction in pathogens and a huge increase in short-chain fatty acids, 80 to 140% just in 4 weeks. So I'd argue that it's very, very good. And no fear around the corn cob and the milk carbohydrates that we add in there. It's keto friendly. It's not going to spike your blood sugar. I said carbohydrate, but it's a fiber. Okay. True or false? Prebiotic fibers feed pathogenic bacteria. So prebiotic fibers are those oligosaccharides that I talked about. The answer is false. We know that your pathogens like to eat fat and protein and sugar and all sorts of other things. Doesn't mean you shouldn't have fat or protein. We just don't need to have, 300 grams of protein a day. It's hard for your kidneys. It's a load for your microbiome. It's going to lead to more inflammation. So we know what your bacteria like to eat, and your keystones love oligosaccharides. Now, third step in this protocol is to rebuild that mucosal barrier. So we want to improve the mucus layer because that's going to help separate things. Let me just show you a picture. So here is an electron microscopy photo of the gut microbiome. Here at the top, this looks like sprinkles or confetti. This is where your gut microbiome is. Those are all of your beautiful bacteria, all lit up, looking very pretty. Then we have our mucus barrier, our mucin 2 layer. And this barrier is separating your gut microbiome from that epithelial lining, the cells lining your intestinal tract. So very important to keep everything separated out. We don't want the bacteria interacting and putting all that pressure. So we want to keep that mucus layer really built up. And people often want to skip that step, and it can often be the most important step for stopping inflammation. So that thick barrier is really important for maintaining, acting as a line of defense, keeping things separated. It helps to support the immune system with signaling molecules, and it's produced by cells in the intestinal lining called goblet cells. They produce the mucus. And your healthy groups of bacteria play a role in this too. So that's why having a really healthy microbiome is important. Pathogens like to eat mucus. They eat it up, and they break it down. And that's why some people suffer from such thin mucus barriers. Whereas your healthy groups of bacteria, the keystone species, specifically one of them called Akkermansia, go on the top of that mucus barrier like Pac-Man, and they eat that top layer of mucus, but then it allows the body to regenerate a new layer of mucus. It's a positive thing. So when we harness the power of those keystones, we can have a much healthier gut. Okay. So we have a couple of products. One is called IgG 2000 and another is called Mega Mucosa. Both of them contain an ingredient called bovine immunoglobulins. Now, these come from cows. There's no dairy at all. It's not a dairy product. But we can take out these immunoglobulins that's part of the cow's immune system to help bind bacterial toxins like lipopolysaccharide. So we want to bind it up like a sponge. Think of it as a bacterial toxin sponge that's soaking it up. So if we use this, we find that 45 days of utilizing the serum bovine immunoglobulins, SBI, reduced dietary endotoxin, that's LPS, no matter if you took 1 gram a day, 2 grams a day, or 4 grams a day. Now, patients find really good relief in taking IgG 2000, especially if they suffer from IBS or looser stools, more diarrhea. What IgG does, again, it's soaking up that LPS and other bacterial toxins. So it's giving your immune system a break. We use it as passive immunity. It's telling your immune system, okay, you can relax, I got this. So it comes in to help support any patient that has Crohn's or IBD. It gets really good relief from this. Now, serum bovine immunoglobulins, they help to bind a bunch of different toxins, but they also help to increase that short-chain fatty acid production too. So you're getting a lot of functions. Megamucosa also contains polyphenols. Polyphenols are like antioxidants, but this helps to lower inflammation, increase short-chain fatty acid, acid production as well, which is really helpful for that overall environment. And then the last ingredient that's found in this product are just amino acids, but we've selected 4 really important amino acids that help to increase mucus production. So these 4 amino acids listed here, threonine, serine, proline, and cysteine, can increase colonic mucin production by 95%. So again, if we restore that mucus barrier, we can keep things separate, we can reduce LPS from even entering into the bloodstream. Okay, so my last pop quiz question of the day. Oh, I didn't put the animation on there. We know the answer. True or false? You can have a healthy gut without having a healthy mucosal barrier. And the answer is false. The mucosal barrier, I think my text got cut off. The mucosal barrier is super important for just separating the 2 environments, but it also plays a role in immune signaling, immune health, and the way in which the immune system can selectively grab bacteria and sample it. So it has a lot of functions that we need to pay attention to. So when we think about the 3 layers, if we break down a very complex world like the gut microbiome, it is complex, but if we just focus on these three foundational layers, then we can really do a lot to heal the gut and get your feeling back on track. So if we start with step one, megaspore, let's change the type of bacteria that are living in this environment. We can increase microbial diversity and short chain fatty acids when we layer in mega prebiotic. We're giving it the food that it wants to eat. And then step three, let's rebuild that mucosal barrier so that these bacterial toxins aren't entering the bloodstream and causing havoc and an inflammatory response in the body. So we can take a very complex world like the gut microbiome and simplify it into 3 easy steps. So who should take or follow a total gut restoration program? It's a great way to reset the gut overall. But the gut damaging factors that I listed before, if somebody was on antibiotics a lot, it's really good to do 1 or 2 rounds of it to get them back on track. Patients that have eczema, allergies, food sensitivities, traveling a lot, have, of course, digestive issues like IBS, IBD, bloating, gas, indigestion, constipation are just some of the ways. Now, if you like to do something like a liver detox protocol, something like that, it's really good to start by supporting the gut first. You'll have a much better support of the liver if the gut is functioning properly. So start with the gut. It becomes ground zero for a lot of treatments. How do we do it? We start with Megaspore Biotic. Now we want to do products one at a time because when we're changing the gut microbiome, you may feel those changes and they're not always the best changes. So we want to be careful there. So Megaspore Biotic, first we start with week 1, 1 cap every other day. Week 2, 1 cap daily. Week 3, try 2 caps a day. Now, if any time you have a change in bowel habits, if you're feeling bloated, just go back a bit, pull back. For some people, 1 cap is too strong. We start with a half cap every other day or a quarter cap. It's not very often though, maybe 10% of people. Now, while still on Megaspore, we layer in the Mega Pre. Again, this is the fertilizer that we have that is going to help support the growth of those keystone species. So you can do capsules. We also have a powder. I prefer the powder, but I just don't like a bunch of caps a day. So week 5 through 6 to 8, do the Mega Pre, layer it in. And then step 3, Mega Mucosa, rebuilding the mucosal barrier. Don't neglect the mucosal barrier. And you can do this in a powder form or a capsule form as well. So at step 3, you're doing all 3 products at the same time. It takes about 12 weeks, but we find that people have really good success just after those 12 weeks. A maintenance program, we get this question a lot. Do you have to be on this forever? Absolutely not. Our main goal is to honestly heal you so you don't need any products. That's our main goal, which is why we've committed to so much research. But, we can't live in a bubble either. And it's hard to live a completely toxin and organic and stress-free life. So doing a small maintenance can be helpful. You can reduce taking Megaspore to a couple times a week and then reduce taking Mega Mucosa and Mega Pre as well. But there's always different cases for every patient that we have to be cognizant of. But a lot of people like to kick off the new year with a TGR protocol just to, get your gut back on track. So let's summarize a little bit. Total gut restoration. We want to recondition with Megaspore Biotic. We're planting the seeds to revitalize this garden. When we do this and we create a better foundation, we can lower lipopolysaccharide entering into the bloodstream by 42% in just 30 days. We can increase short chain fatty acid production, and we're specifically growing our keystone species. No other probiotic on the market can say that. So we're very proud of that. We want to reinforce these changes with our Mega Prebiotic fertilizer. We want to specifically feed these keystone species. Give them the food they want. We know what they like because this will help those keystone species grow. And the third step is Mega Mucosa. Rebuild the mucosal barrier. We want that thick and robust mucosal barrier separating the microbiome from your intestinal lining. And we can bind toxins with the immunoglobulins. We can increase mucus production with the amino acids, and we can get more short chain fatty acid production with the polyphenols. So we've got a lot of different functions and just a couple of 3 products that go a long way in just 12 weeks. All right.
Thank you, Lacey. Let's put some love into the chat for Lacey. That was fantastic. Really thorough, really clear. I have tons of questions for you from our audience. Thank you all for your patience and your beautiful responses. But pop some love into the chat for Lacey. What was your big aha moment? This is a chat request. And then also in the chat is the 15% off your entire Microbiome Labs cart. You can register for an account. It's all written out right there. You have to use patient code direct code, SIBO SOS. It's spelled for you. And then at checkout, use the coupon code NOBLOAT15. Now, have something else. It's 6:12 Eastern time. I like to throw in they call them fast action bonuses. So for people who are doing something with between now and we'll do 7:15, we do have something where you send proof of purchase to us at info@SIBO.com. And Dr. Leonard Weinstock is a phenomenal gastroenterologist. And he did a presentation for our community on leaky gut. And it's a masterclass that normally is $59. If anybody makes one purchase, whatever you want, before 7:15 Eastern time and sends us the proof of purchase tonight, not tomorrow, you have some proof of purchase, then we will have a page set up where you can get this masterclass. We'll send it to you. And I'm going to show it to you very briefly. I pulled it up and here is sharing screen, and then we'll get to your questions. Share. Here's what it looks like. This is right in line with everything that Lacey has been talking about, but he deep nerd dive
Looks like it.
into the depths. He's an amazing doctor. So I just wanted to mention that to you if you are interested. Just a little extra nudge. Okay. How does the thyroid impact motility and peristalsis?
Oh yeah, there is a gut thyroid connection, and we do have some education around that. Well, of course, hypothyroid issues are linked directly to motility issues and constipation for women, so it's quite unfortunate. With our program and protocols, we do see changes in some of the gut hormone links. We don't have any direct evidence linking it to the thyroid, but in theory, it would support thyroid health as well, especially because it's supporting liver health. And a lot of liver or thyroid hormone production starts in the liver too. So we see this entire network of connection between our bodily organ systems, and when they're all working optimally, you'll have better results. Now, if you have motility issues while also having a thyroid condition, reconditioning the microbiome can help. You may need a little extra help. We could utilize things like potent ginger walls that help with motility. Even a little bit of magnesium citrate could help give you relief. We don't want to rely on them, but we also don't want you to feel uncomfortable on a day-to-day basis.
I've taken literally dozens of courses of antibiotics. How do I rehabilitate my gut that I basically napalmed most decades of my life to a meaningful degree?
Well, you're not alone. I think that so many people have been exposed to antibiotics throughout the course of their life. In fact, I have strep throat right now for the first time in my 40 years of life. I know.
Oh, no.
So, none of us are completely immune. I neglected it for a week and a half, but now I have to be on penicillin. So, we can't control everything.
Right.
But you can do the best you can. So, give your body the tools it needs. Does that mean you're going to regrow everything from what you were born with? Probably not. We can't even answer that question. But we do think that the microbiome has a memory and it knows what it wants. Now, we can't tell you exactly what needs to go in your gut, but we can give it the right tools that it needs to rebuild. So I would start with, especially Megaspore, Megapre, give it tons of Megapre and see what types of organisms can regrow. In the future, hopefully 10, 15 years down the line, we'll have more information on fecal microbiome transplants, and that may be a solution. Today, we don't have that information readily available.
And thanks for doing this with strep throat. I'm so sorry.
Oh, it's okay. I feel way better. Don't worry.
Okay. I'm vegan, so I cannot take megamucosa. What can I do or take to serve a similar function? Hi, Petunia.
Yeah, the citrus polyphenols are something that you can do. And then, of course, the amino acids as well. But we do get that question sometimes. There's nothing from the binding capacity that I'm thinking about, because that's the cow source. So that's the only animal protein source. But if you find a citrus polyphenol blend, that can help. But then I'm trying to think other things within the vegan diet that can play a role in supporting mucosal barrier health.
I would also just Google like vegan IgG. There's some from, no, that won't work.
I know, because I'm thinking about collagen and bone broth, and I'm like, nope, nope, nope.
egg.
Yep.
We have to keep going.
IGY. Yep.
We don't have an easy answer on that one. Potent ginger walls, is that what you said?
Yes, that can help with motility.
Okay. So ginger.
I don't like to use like Cape aloe too often. It's very triggering and aggravating to the gut.
Jean, she's asking, could you go over again how much to take for the total of the 12 weeks? I want to show you something because we have so many questions. We're not going to be able to do that right this second. But when you go to the link that I posted, you can actually, hang on. You can, where did it go? You literally go Total Gut Restore. It takes you to Microbiome Labs, and it has the instructions on the website. So I wanted to mention that. And when you pick it up at Microbiome Labs, it is, here it is. I got it. Da-da-da-da-da. Okay. So here's what it looks like. It comes in a box, recondition, reinforce, rebuild. You have another little presentation there. It talks about each product. And then it teaches you how to use it.
Yeah.
So it comes in a kit.
Yep.
Oh, there you go. All right. We did that. Okay. I'm having a colonoscopy soon. What sorts of things should I have them look for, get pictures of, would help me to know if these products you're showing us would direct help for me? Well, there's no. Yeah. It's a bummer because we think they're going to have a tube down there. They're going to be able to see if I have leaky gut. And they can't. That isn't what, there's really very few tests for leaky gut. What is your favorite test for leaky gut?
For leaky gut, so that I would say there's two different tests. You can do a leaky gut test through Vibrant Clinical Laboratory. They have an excellent leaky gut test through the Gut Zoomer test. I'm sorry, Wheat Zoomer test. But then if you want to look at the microbiome, we offer a microbiome testing solution called Biome FX. And this allows us to look at the types of bacteria, keystone species, how many bacteria contain lipopolysaccharide, and then the functions of your gut. So we can tell you if you're creating methane, hydrogen sulfide, different inflammatory compounds. And it gives us a snapshot of what's going on in there. Hey, a colonoscopy is one of the most effective medical procedures that you can have done to protect yourself. So it's a really good procedure. But if you want to look at your microbiome, not going to be the right test for that.
And if you did want to get a microbiome test at Microbiome Labs, which has the very advanced technology and testing, that's also 15% off too. Okay, in what ways exactly does travel pose a dysbiosis risk? At what point of travel, where and how?
Yeah, it's just the stress, the changes in your sleep patterns, the foods that you're eating, the antibiotics that you're exposed to on a United Airlines flight where it's sprayed down with an antimicrobial substance. It's all these little things that just play a role in it, including even radiation in the sky when we're traveling.
Right.
Yeah, so
plus,
there's a lot of
and potential food poisoning, as well as I just had it. Oh, have you ever heard of vacation constipation?
Oh yeah, every woman on the planet has heard of that one.
So, but you definitely want to avoid food poisoning.
Yeah, and no one needs to live in a bubble. It's just we can arm ourselves with these tools to prevent it from getting worse and to get ourselves back on track.
Okay, guys, if you go to the Microbiome website, Microbiome Labs website, and you look for the stool test, you'll find it there. It's called Biome FX. Is that right?
Yes.
Yeah. Biome FX is in F as in Frank, X is in xylophone. Okay. What do you or the literature consider too heavy exercises and too much exercise that results in gut leakiness? Where is this line with types, duration, frequency of exercise? Also would appreciate knowing the same with the numbers of hours of sleep.
Sleep is a little easier for me to talk about. It's consistently less than 6 hours of sleep per night. Yeah, that's a hard one for me too. I have a 1-year-old and a busy life, and my Oura Ring yells at me every single morning. But exercise is a little more difficult for me to quantify. Now, if you're an avid marathon runner and you're doing marathon after marathon after marathon, that's probably a lot of training. It does put a lot of stress on our body. You know, health is like a bell curve. So we have a really good amount of exercise is probably around 60 minutes a day. When we start doing these extremes a couple of hours a day, it leads to it being too much. It's a lot on our joints. It's a lot on our body. It's a lot on our gut. So that extra exercise, those long runs that marathon runners will do, I've run many marathons, it does lead to a more permeability in the gut. as a way to facilitate more nutrient intake, water flow, and absorption. It's your body's way of trying to compensate for such a stressful state. I would say that IgG mixed into a water bottle, I didn't know about this when I used to do marathons, could be really beneficial if you mix that powder into a performance drink.
Okay, we have 12 questions and we have 8 minutes. Let's see what we can do. Are there certain things we can take that effectively bind the lipopolysaccharides and get them out of the body that way?
IgG, number one. Colostrum cannot compete at all. Colostrum has like 8%.
And what can a person take that has been shown to bind the endotoxins other than the LPS, other than dietary fiber?
Again, the IgG, the immunoglobulins coming from cow serum. I know that sounds gross, but it's extremely clinically effective, backed by like 60 trials and highly regulated. It's amazing.
Is LPS related to beta glucuronidase activity being off as well? How do these affect the menstrual cycle specifically?
Yes and no. So beta glucuronidase is a way of showing us if you're recycling too much estrogen. So for those in the audience, so it's going to let us know if there's playing a role in estrogen dominance, things like PCOS. Now, the same bacteria that contain LPS are the same bacteria that secrete beta glucuronidase. So there is a link there. It's not the same, but if you lower one, you're probably lowering the other. Absolutely.
Any research done on LPS levels changing with semaglutide and other injectables?
No, that would be too new, but that's an interesting idea. And I would guess that if you have high LPS, you're not going to get the effect that you want from the semaglutides or GLP-1 agonists. And we hear that a lot of people aren't getting the results that they want. And that can be from a million reasons, but yeah.
How does a traumatic brain injury affect the gut, and how to restore the motility of the gut after it suffers greatly from a TBI or other? I'm so sorry.
Yeah, and that's very difficult. You'll probably have a leakiness and a permeability, more permeable blood-brain barrier following a traumatic brain injury. I would support the gut with just a total gut restoration protocol. Watch your diet, eat organic, and let your body heal itself. I mean, there's so
take
many
it
things
easy.
you can do.
Look into melatonin. Also, there's some good
advice. Yep.
I'm still thinking about the coconut oil LPS connection. Who should consider consuming coconut and other oils, and who should absolutely avoid taking it?
Yeah, it's really looking at the overall composition of your diet. I'm not somebody that says, no, you can't do that. But when we look at the LPS spike, we see a higher spike with coconut oil than we do with something like olive oil. So just using the right oils for the right things that we're cooking with. I love steamed carrots with coconut oil. You can't tell me not to do that. I think it tastes so good together. But if you're eating a very meat and fat heavy diet, then you're going to have to watch your composition compared to somebody that has more of a foundation in vegetables, plants, and fruits.
My alternative practitioner, this is a good one. My alternative practitioner told me that spore probiotics are basically a bottle of micro dirt that has any excrement from animals and other things filtered out. And we can get the same thing from eating vegetables from the garden with dirt on it.
Well, don't eat dirt, because you can get other things in, like you can get botulism, parasites. Just first of all, don't do that.
That's a very limited, ignorant view. I'm sorry.
Yeah, it is.
That's a very strong statement for me to say. I say things like that.
How were probiotics discovered? Well, they were discovered when people were actually eating camel dung during World War II, when they had GI issues in the desert, and they later on figured out what was helping their GI distress. They are found in the nature around us, which is good. We want to utilize bacteria that can survive in the world around us. So our ancestors consumed them, we consume them. But we've combined the combination of nature and science. We've isolated out the spores and the strains that have the biggest benefit to humans.
And then they studied it like crazy. We're moving
crazy.
on. We just watched a half an hour presentation or 40 minutes on it.
Don't eat dirt. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. I'm assuming if one discontinues your product, the results come to an end until the daily dose continues. Could be wrong. Welcome your opinion. How long do the effects of your products last from start to finish? That depends on your microbiome, of course. And are there any cumulative results that last for months or years after one chooses to discontinue the products?
We haven't done a longitudinal study that would go on for years and years. But what I could say is it just depends on your overall diet and lifestyle. If you're someone like hey, I want to party every weekend and I want to eat my fast food. I'm just going to be on these products for the rest of my life. Fine, so be it. But if you want to try to eat an organic diet, reduce your toxic burden in the household, then I think you're somebody that can move on to a maintenance program. And if you're working, it depends on your symptoms too. If it's gut brain, work on meditation. If it's, do you see what I mean?
Yes,
it
of
kind of
course.
depends.
It's
Yeah.
contextual.
Yes.
For people taking H2 blockers, how does this impact the acidic environment promoted by mega prebiotic hygiene?
It won't play a role at all. So if you're taking any sort of antacids, you're talking about the stomach, which is a good 7, 8, 10 feet away from the colon. It's a totally different world. When you leave the small intestine and go into the colon, you go through a valve and it's a different environment. So it's like outer space. That's how I think of it. Yep. So totally different, won't impact it.
Okay.
Now, if you're on an H2 blocker, though, you do want to recondition your gut because oftentimes we see more pathogens get through if your stomach acid's low.
How much can we increase the mucosal layer with pre or probiotics relative to products like marshmallow leaf or root?
I don't know enough of the research, if there's been enough research done on the actual mucous membrane. Of course, those are really gentle and soothing herbs that can play a role in overall digestive health. We're very research backed, so that's just where my education lies there. Yeah.
But doesn't one need adequate HCl to break down the capsules?
I mean, you can argue that, or you can just take it out of the capsule.
Yeah.
You don't need the capsule. There's no function. Some people use the delayed release. We don't need that.
Right. Sorry to say this. I have a lot of dampness, snottiness, etc., that I deal with every day. Is that a sign of thick mucosal barrier, perhaps too thick with too much mucus?
Not necessarily. If you have a lot of dampness and snottiness, I'd be worried about your just upper respiratory health. And you might want to look into some like nasal lavages and stuff like that. But no, it shouldn't have any impact over your overall gut health. The same cells, but different parts of your body. Mm-hmm.
Over what period of time does endotoxemia develop? Typically days, weeks, months, or years. And how long does it take to reverse the endotoxemic state? As soon as how long? And Pam, go back to the link. You don't have the whole link. That's why your link isn't working. Go back to the chat and you will find it there. I literally am staring at the full link on there. Okay.
So what period of time does it take to develop endotoxemia? Well, I would argue that it can happen kind of quickly, not to be scary, but over the course of, let's say, a month or so. If you've remember that movie, Super Size Me, where you ate McDonald's every single day for 30 days. I would argue that at the end of that 30 days, he was probably in a very metabolic endotoxemic state with high LPS because you're just going through such an extreme. But the beauty is the resilience.
And God rest his soul, by the way.
As I was saying that, I remembered that. But your microbiome is flexible. Look at our leaky gut study. College students were eating pizza. After 30 days, we reduced metabolic endotoxemia by 42%. So it's not about living all this restriction and fear. It's about healing. We can heal. Yes.
We can heal. Jean, are the products or kits compatible with SIBO protocols? No, they're not. Okay, thank you. They're not. You want to get that SIBO reduced? You want to get that overgrowth reduced? Get yourself that microbiome balanced out in terms of prebiotics. You don't want to do that until that SIBO is resolved. Agreed. A lot of people do beautifully with Megaspore, the other parts of the kit, start slow and build up. But for the prebiotic, you want to wait until your SIBO is cleared.
Agreed. Yes. Make sure that's totally clear. Make sure you're out of the window for a relapse before you weave in the prebiotic. Now, I think it's essential, though, once you're in the clear and everything is functioning properly, because you probably need some rebuilding further down.
Thank you, Lacey. Thank you, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. Thanks for joining me late in the day for our usual 7:15, 45 minutes from now. If you do send us your proof of purchase for anything at Microbiome Labs that you have bought today with our link. Someone sent me something from like a week ago from someone else's account. I was like, what? That's just really yeah. Anyway, so send that to us at info@sibosos.com and we will send you that phenomenal masterclass. Info@sibosos. If you can pull that off. If not, you're still getting the 15% off the entire Microbiome Labs cart, including the vaginal microbiome kit and the stool microbiome kit tests, I should say. They're really phenomenal. Lacey, I'm going to send you a different link so we can just do a recap. And thanks, everybody. All right. Have a great everything. All right. We'll send you a replay as well. Thank you so much. All right. Great job. Great job, everybody. Thanks.